Hello, and welcome back to Umineko. When last we left off, we had finished the main part of episode 4, and now we have a tea party. Though there's a lot of unfinished business to address. The second day, October 5th, 1986. I don't have a clue what's going on. Please, someone explain in a way even I can understand. What happened yesterday? I was in the kitchen of the mansion, grabbing some food without permission. If you open up that massive business class refrigerator, you can find anything. You can eat and drink as much as you like. Even if the typhoon didn't clear up for a week, I'd have more than enough to eat. With wine in one hand, I was helping myself to some dry cured ham. I wonder just how expensive this wine and ham are. You ingredients are out of luck too. If only you'd had Goda-san to cook you, you could have been reborn as much more incredible food. I looked at the clock. Very soon, it would be midnight. October 5th, the second day, would end. The insane October 4th, yesterday, seemed like a lie. That's how much nothing had happened after that test thing. Nothing happened. No phone call came, and no letters came. No person came, and no one attacked me. Nothing happened at all. I want to start demanding a refund on all the time and energy that tension stole from me. Because after that, for an entire day, a full 24 hours, nothing happened. So surely, nothing's gonna happen now. A full 24 hours ago, Beatrice called me to the spot in front of the mansion's entrance. There, I was given a strange test to determine the successor to the headship, or whatever. I gave a serious answer in my own way, but it somehow hadn't meshed with the other side. Beatrice got pissed for no reason and fell silent. I yelled at her to try and say something, but she gave no answer. When I asked where Maria was, she just told me to go to the chapel and left. To tell the truth, it was an anticlimax. No matter what kind of weird test you give, at least tell me whether I've passed or failed. Are you trying to say, thanks for coming, your results will be mailed to you later, or something? Quit messing with me. Anyway, I then headed to the chapel. After failing their tests, both George, Aniki, and Jessica were killed. I couldn't let Maria get killed too. Also, I might get a chance to catch some person trying to kill her. As a little kid, I often heard from Jessica that you'd get in trouble if you went near the chapel. So I'd never been there, but I at least knew where it was. I couldn't find any trace of a person there. But there was a key bundle lying in front of the door. I thought this might be someone telling me to open the door, but after trying all the keys, I found that none of them fit. I also called Maria's name, but there was no answer whatsoever. I searched around the chapel, but there was a limit to what I could do in the pitch black with just a flashlight. I realized that this key bundle might be a set of master keys, which could make it possible to open the door to the mansion. I found no sign of Maria, so I returned to the mansion. The mansion was wrapped in silence and in a horrible stench. However, it's amazing how good humans are at adapting. The inside of the mansion must still be wrapped up in that smell. However, I grew completely used to it and stopped minding it. It didn't seem any worse than any old house where someone had burnt some meat. At first, I was bewildered by the stench, but I decided to head to the dining hall for the time being. And found those corpses that were so pitiful, Goda-san and the rest had hesitated to speak of them in detail. Alright. We're finally getting some of these updates. Shiromiya Natsuhi. Her corpse was found in the dining hall. About half of her head was destroyed. It's probably reasonable to assume that she was murdered with a powerful gun or something similar. However, the witnesses don't believe she was killed with a gun. Shiromiya Eva. Her corpse was found in the dining hall. Okay, the first paragraph same. Oh, the whole thing's the same. Yes, same. Okay, all of these are the same. It was the remains of Aunt Natsuhi and the others who'd become the first victims. Half of each head had been completely split open, and it was so gruesome that even without knowing a thing about examining corpses, I could say they were 100% dead. And on top of that, the remaining halves of their faces were left like normal, so it was even easy to identify them. Really convenient corpses these were. And in addition to those 6 bodies, was one more. The 7th corpse was Maria. She lay next to Aunt Rosa as though sleeping alongside her. I cried at the death of an innocent young girl, and at the cruel way my dad and the rest had died. I raced through the mansion swinging the hat-stand spear, yelling, "Come out here, bastard!" Alright, let's see Maria's. Oops. Shiromiya Maria. Her corpse was found in the dining hall. Badler wasn't able to make out any wounds in particular, so he assumed that she was killed by some kind of poison. The most peaceful form of invitation to the Golden Land. But I couldn't find any trace of anyone else. Thinking they might be planning to hide somewhere and attack me from behind, I went around searching for hiding places. Sometimes growing more cautious, and sometimes intentionally letting my guard down in various ways. But in the end, not even a kitten appeared. Then, morning came. My tension and fatigue, combined with my drowsiness, made for the worst kind of dawn. Humans are pretty incredible. Even when a murderer might be hiding somewhere, we prioritize drowsiness and fatigue over our own lives. By that time, I was starting to feel pretty ridiculous. After all, for a full 6 hours before dawn, I'd walked around the mansion, yelling at the culprits to show themselves. My search had been a careful one, and I'd tired myself out and let my guard down. Even so, no one came to attack me. Basically, I lost patience with them, and figured out they could do whatever the hell they wanted. The boat won't come until the typhoon passes. They said on TV that it won't pass until tomorrow, so I've got another full day today. Lazing about lost its interest. And even though I knew it would probably make the police mad, I decided to play detective a bit. First was the dining hall, where the very first murder had occurred. The 6 who had been killed in the beginning really were pitiful. The weapon used was probably a gun. Maybe their heads were split by something powerful, like a magnum bullet or a shotgun. It was a reasonable theory to hold. Compared to that, the 7th corpse, Maria, had died in a much better and cleaner way. At a glance, I could see no external wounds and didn't understand how she'd been killed. But by her mouth were traces of bubbles that she might have spat out, and it looked like a typical death by poisoning that you might see in a TV drama. Wasn't Maria called out to the chapel and given a test? So why was she in the corpse-filled dining hall, lying next to her mother, dead? Even if the cause of death was poison, who gave it to her? Her clothes weren't disturbed at all. It's hard to imagine that she was forcibly pushed down and given an injection of poison. It's probably better to assume that she was given a capsule of poison or something and made to swallow it. But compared to the scattered and violently mutilated corpses in this room, Maria's corpse was too clean. If they had a gun, they only needed to pull the trigger. But poisoning, whether by having her drink it or by an injection, would take a lot more effort. Considering the culprit's brutal nature, you'd think Maria's death alone was given special treatment. Why was only Maria given a sleep-like death? True, being killed is always a pitiful thing, but for some reason Maria's death alone seemed very courteous to me. Both of Maria's hands were joined on her chest, as though the dead person had put them there herself. Did Maria do that herself before dying? Isn't this usually something done by someone else after the person dies? As though sleeping with her mother, whose head was half crushed, Maria dozed in peace. For some reason, that contrast really bugged me. Including the direct cause, it's probably safe to say that Maria's death is shrouded in mystery. And more than anything else, the biggest mystery of this dining hall was the pitfalls. The pitfalls that both Uncle Cress's group and Goda-san's had mentioned. After the first 6 were killed, 5 more fell through pitfalls and were captured. What are pitfalls? Those things that suddenly open and you fall through them, right? The room had a solid floor with a carpet that looked dignified, if a bit worn out. No matter how you looked at it, it was single piece. If a pitfall had opened up, there would have to be a seam just in that place. And if there had been some trick like a pitfall, wouldn't it creak when you walked on it? No matter how much I walked around feeling the carpet, I just couldn't imagine that a pitfall was hidden here. Anyway, it'd be one thing if a single person fell, but a full 5 people did. By putting together everyone's stories, each one of them had fallen from a different location. So at the very least there had to be 5 separate places with pitfalls. So what does this mean? Was this room actually made with pitfalls across the entire floor? So by pushing a button you could open up a pitfall in the location of your choice? Some kind of contraption like that? That kind of ridiculous mechanism would be surprising even in a ninja mansion. But if Dad and the rest had heard about this, I wonder if they'd say, I wouldn't put it past Grandfather to do it, to make it. At any rate, I didn't learn anything more from the dining hall. Do the pitfalls not exist? Or do they exist, but I just can't find them? Amateur that I am? I can't say for sure. Since they claimed that the pitfalls were there, I can't ignore them, even if I can't find them. The next ones to be killed were Jessica and George Aniki. I discovered George Aniki when I'd been called out for my test. He had been called out to the arbor in the rose garden, and probably shot in the forehead with a gun. Jessica had been called to her own room on the second floor of the mansion. The door to her room was locked. But that wasn't a problem at all, since I had a master key. Inside the room, it was horrible. But after the dining hall, I was used to corpses, so I built up a bit of an immunity. The phone receiver was loose and dangling. Had she been killed while still on the phone with me? Jessica was leaning against the wall right next to it, with half of her head split open. Let's take a look at that. I wonder if it'll be basically the same. Okay, her corpse was found in her room on the second floor of the mansion. About half of her head was destroyed. It's probably reasonable to assume that she was murdered with a powerful gun or something similar. She was smashed by her own attack due to George's counter-offensive specialized barrier. As far as I could tell by glancing at the scene, it looked as though she'd been killed while on the phone. In that case, had the culprit been right there before her eyes? I hadn't gotten that impression when listening to Jessica's voice over the phone. I'm pretty sure Jessica said, "They got me." It's probably best to assume that she'd already received a fatal wound at the time of the phone call. That's right, and she also said this: "When you come, Battler, I'll be a corpse with half of its head split open." Yes, that's what she said. From what I could tell by looking at Jessica's corpse, there were no wounds on her other than the damage to her head. Could she have had an injury serious enough to make her prepared for death, and then died halfway through the phone call? But the way she talked on the phone made me think that she'd escaped harm for the time being. You shouldn't be able to have a casual conversation over a phone if the culprit's right before your eyes. So, did the culprit come in partway through the phone call and kill Jessica? No, that can't be right. After all, this room was locked. Wait, that doesn't tell me anything. If the culprit stole a master key from one of the victims, locking the door would be meaningless. But she had no external wounds other than her head. In that case, should I assume that the fatal wound she was prepared to die from and the actual external wound that damaged her head were two different things? And that both of them were made to the same part of the body? In other words, Jessica was struck severely to the head and received an incredibly bad wound. Then she called me and either lost consciousness or died while on the phone. Then the culprit came and damaged her head again. Something like that. After being called to this room, Jessica was attacked by the culprit and received a serious injury. Then the culprit thought she'd been killed and went away for the time being. But Jessica miraculously started breathing again and called me with what would become her dying message. Then the culprit realized that they'd failed to kill her and rushed back to deliver the final blow after Jessica fell unconscious from massive blood loss. That seems to add up, more or less. Except for how Jessica was able to accurately predict the nature of that final blow. And there was one more thing that bugged me about the phone call from Jessica. Jessica had said this. George and Isan's done for too. That was an instant death. She said it almost as though she'd witnessed George Aniki being killed. But while you certainly could see the rose garden from the window in Jessica's room, and you could even see the roof of the arbor where George Aniki had been summoned, it was very far away. Add on the fact that it was the night of a typhoon, and it's very hard to imagine that she was able to witness everything that happened by the arbor from this window. And more than anything else, Jessica left before George Aniki, so she shouldn't have known that George Aniki's test took place by the arbor. Why did Jessica know that George Aniki had been killed? Also, during my search of the entire mansion, I found Kirie-san's corpse as well. It was in one of the old guest rooms at the back of the first floor. In the past, before the construction of the guest house, the relatives had spent the night in these. Kirie-san's situation matched Jessica's perfectly. Well, let's check that death notice. Shurimiya Kirie. Her corpse was found in a guest room deep within the mansion. There was a single hole in the center of her forehead. It's probably reasonable to assume she was shot with a gun or something similar. A demon stake was buried in the hole in her forehead, but it's hard to imagine that this was the cause of death. I didn't miss. I missed on purpose to tease her. Yeah. She'd probably been killed during her phone call with me. The receiver was hanging untidily, and Kirie-san lay crumpled in that corner. But the way she had been killed was very different from Jessica. Her head wasn't smashed. Instead, a stake with an occult design was buried into her forehead. It was so gruesome, so I pulled it out. After pulling it out, I realized that this might get me into trouble with the police later. So, a little too late, I set it down by Kirie-san's side. Its tip was sharp and stained with enough blood that it must have penetrated fully to the brain. I didn't know what kind of metal it was made of, but it was about as heavy as a paperweight. Certainly, if you were stabbed all out with something like this, it might cause a terrible wound. I probably knew what that stake meant. It's one of those. The style of killing from the fourth twilight onwards in the witch's epitaph. It's probably that gouge with a stake and kill thing. However, a human skull is very firm. No matter how much someone mustered their strength, could it really have been pierced so neatly? No. By my reasoning, this stake wasn't the cause of death, but had been used to damage the corpse after death. She was probably killed with a gun or something, like George Aniki. And the stake had been stuck into the hole left by the gun. Thinking of it that way makes it easier to accept. But was Kirie-san really killed with a gun? As she said on the phone, even though she was holed up inside a locked room, Kirie-san was being attacked. In fact, this room had been locked. Also, She mentioned a golden thread or something. She mentioned a golden thread or something flying in and attacking her. In fact, there were 4 places around Kiryu-san's corpse with holes that could have been caused by some kind of attack. But a golden thread attacked her. Through the keyhole? I looked at the door from Kiryu-san's perspective. If it had been one of those old keyholes you see in old mystery movies, where you can peek through to the other side, then it would have clearly been possible to stick something through it. But even though the doors in this mansion were old-fashioned, the locks were the familiar, average cylinder style that you could find in any normal house. In other words, they weren't constructed in a way that would let you penetrate through them. So no matter how thin an object you might try to stick through the keyhole, it's unthinkable that something penetrated through from the outside and attacked. A cylinder lock and a keyhole? But despite that, Kiryu-san definitely said that something like a golden thread had flown in through the keyhole, spun around while aiming for her, and attacked her. A golden thread attacking through a keyhole. I couldn't understand what it meant at all. But even so, Kiryu-san probably predicted that I wouldn't be able to understand all this. And it wasn't just Kiryu-san. Jessica said it over the phone too. No, since the very beginning, from the time we talked with Goda-san and Kumasawa-san and got the phone call from Uncle Krause's group, everyone has said the same consistent thing. Grandfather's summoned witches and demons and is killing people with magic. They'd been shown that right before their eyes. These weren't tricks or fakes. There was no choice but to believe it. With one voice, they had all said that. When the mystery woman calling herself Beatrice appeared, even I had pretty much believed that she was a real witch and might start summoning goat monsters right and left. However, after being left alone for a whole day, my feeling of tension had faded completely. I was now able to think that something so stupid definitely couldn't be true. Did they lose their heads a little in an extraordinary situation where their lives were exposed to danger? And mistakenly think that a witch was attacking them with magic? But multiple people gave the same kind of testimony, and on top of that, none of their opinions conflicted each other. If it had just been a single statement, I'd be able to suspect that they just didn't see what they thought they saw. But doing that now is pretty difficult. Then, right next to the back door, I found Uncle Krause with his head half smashed. Oh. Shuramiya Krause. His corpse was found in a guest room deep within the mansion. About half of his head was destroyed. It's probably reasonable to assume that he was murdered with a gun or something similar. A demon stake was buried into the damaged area. No one can escape from the Chiester sisters' golden arrows. Even though he'd escaped the dungeon of Kuidorian, and somehow made it this far by a secret underground passage, he had been killed. buried into the gruesome cross-section of his half-crushed head was a stake with an occult design, like the one that had been buried into Kirie-san's forehead. And in this situation, it was very hard to imagine that this stake was the weapon used. He had been killed with a powerful gun like the 6 in the dining hall. And after death, he'd been jabbed with a stake like Kirie-san. I wonder if the golden threads that Kirie-san spoke of attacked Uncle Kraus too. Does there exist some kind of tool, like an endoscope, that's very thin but can be moved about at will? And that can also attack people? No way. I've never heard of anything like that. But even so, if this fact had been revealed to one of their relatives, maybe they'd say, I wouldn't put it past grandfather to make it. Since I can't deny the existence of Golden Thread X that can be moved at will and attack people, I can either accept that this mysterious weapon exists, or else I'll have to accept that this was a murder committed with magic. To find the next corpse, I had to go out through the back door and search around outside a bit. Behind the mansion, in the wild-grown bushes that were almost swallowed up by the forest, there was something like an old well. And right next to it were Dr. Nanjo and Shannon-chan's corpses. Both corpses had their heads smashed, and though they weren't stuck in, there were stakes lying next to each damaged head. Each corpse was atrocious, but having to look directly at Shannon-chan's lovely face, which had been half blown away, was very painful. Then there was the well. I'd heard that inside it was a secret underground passage to the mysterious mansion, Kuidorian. By this time I'd begun to think that Beatrice and her accomplices might have used this underground passage and left for Kuidorian. Even though there had apparently been at least 10 of them, I hadn't seen a trace of anyone. It seemed very likely that she'd already escaped to a different location. There's the typhoon. They can't go out to sea. It goes the same for the forest. There's no way they could traverse such a deep, uncultivated forest on foot. In that case, they had only one place to go. The mysterious hidden mansion, Kuidorian. Through the secret underground passage at the bottom of the well. By this time, I had entirely lost my fear of being killed if I happened to come across the enemy. Don't fuck with me. This time I'll storm into your mansion. What the hell? Damn it! The old well had a firm cover on it. The cover was an iron grill. The gaps between the bars were perhaps 20 centimeters across. You could peer inside, but it really wasn't something a human could pass through. If I hadn't known better, I wouldn't have thought it was anything more than a simple cover to prevent falls. But from what Kirie-san had told me, I knew that its purpose was to prevent intruders from entering the secret underground passage in its depths. But the cover was extremely firm and rigid, and no matter how much I pushed or pulled, I couldn't even get close to opening it. I couldn't find any obvious lock. It might be sealed by some mechanism. but no matter how much I investigated it, I couldn't find anything to release it. The biggest piece of information Kyrie-san had tried to give me, gambling her final moments, was the underground passage in this well. Don't think I'll be stopped by something like this cover. I'll smash it to bits. I'll search for a tool. I had an idea. After all, I'd seen the various tools in the gardening shed when we locked Goto-san and Kumasawa-san in there. But the shutter to the gardening shed was locked. On top of that, the key was with Goto-san, who was dead on the inside. In other words, this gardening shed was a closed room. There's no way to open it from the outside. In that case, I've got to break the shutter. There has to be a tool for that somewhere. Kinda feels like I'm going in circles here. Then, while searching for that, I learned that the source of the stench that had permeated the mansion this whole time was the underground boiler room. The boiler room was dimly lit, humid, smelled horrible, and on top of all that, was incredibly creepy. But there were several large tools there, and I managed to find a fire hatchet and some massive wire cutters. And grandfather's corpse. No, strictly speaking, I should probably say that I found a burnt corpse of a person who was probably grandfather. Someone's corpse had been stuffed into the blazing fires of the boiler. However, by coincidence, I was able to notice the number of toes on the corpse. Both feet had 6 toes. That's right. I think I heard it from Dad sometime long ago. Something about grandfather having polydactyly, with extra toes. According to old Ashuramiya family tradition, it seems that those with extra fingers or toes had some kind of good fortune and were treated as a good omen. And because of that, grandfather was selected to be the successor or something. But I wonder if I can be certain this is grandfather's body just from the number of toes. After all, grandfather was supposed to be the leader of the group of culprits. I didn't have a clue why he'd get stuffed into a boiler in a place like this and die. A mysterious corpse, burning and spitting out a terrible stench amid the flames. If it really was grandfather, did that mean the leader of the group of culprits wasn't grandfather, but that Beatrice, after all? Grandfather was used because he was convenient, and was then thrown away? Unfortunately, it didn't look like I'd be given a chance to hear grandfather's side of the story. Now that I had obtained a tool, I thought about rushing to take on the cover to the well. But I decided to break the shutter to the gardening shed first. I had plenty of time to kill anyway. I figured I should check on the condition of Goto-san's and Kumasawa-san's corpses. I hit the shutter with the hatchet, breaking into it. Stuck the wire cutter into the crack, and scissored it around, opening up a hole. Then I faced Goto-san and Kumasawa-san's corpses once more. As a result, I learned a new fact. First, they had not died by being hung by the neck. Both of their feet were solidly on the floor, and on both of their foreheads were signs that they'd been shot with a gun. The loop seemed longer than a normal noose. On top of that, the length was different on each to match the height of each person. In other words, the lengths had been adjusted so that both Goda-san, who was tall, and Kumasawa-san, who was short, had their feet solidly, but barely, on the ground. And while the ropes carried both of their weights as their heads lolled, both of them had some slack below their knees. This meant that if they'd stood up with these loops around their necks, there would have been some extra length. In other words, these loops wouldn't have been that great for hanging people. The direct cause of death was probably a shot to the head. It was gruesome. Their insides were still dripping out from those gaping holes, staining their faces a deep red. It's probably best to assume that they were then hung, pulled up, and left exposed like that. If they'd been shot with a gun, they would probably have been lying down on the floor. If that had been the case, you wouldn't have been able to tell they were dead even if you peeked through the window. The mountain of stuff would have gotten in the way, so if they'd been lying down, they would have been hidden. To make the deaths of these two known to the rest of us who couldn't go inside, they would have had to hang them like this, making it visible from the outside. Was this done to get back at us for thinking that those two would surely be safe if we left the key with them? Let's check their death notes before I forget and get too far on. Servant Goda. His corpse was found in the Rose Garden storehouse. It's assumed that he was hung by the neck after being shot in the forehead. They put ropes around their own necks. That can be a pretty interesting experience now and then. First half is the same, but for Kumasawa, as long as I could construct a closed room murder, nothing else mattered. I wonder where the shutter key we gave Goda-san, which should have ensured their safety, is now. That key was in the pocket of his trousers. The gardening shed key had been kindly left there, and even the plate was attached. In other words, the gardening shed had been a closed room after all. And that gave rise to another question. Because this can't be explained by a hanging. If they didn't commit suicide, then those nooses were set up by the culprit. It might have been possible to shoot them through the window, but it's really unthinkable that someone could have tied two loops to the beam from the outside. And furthermore, there's no way they could have lifted up the heavy corpses. In other words, to do all of this, they would have had to go inside. But the key was in Goda-san's pocket, and the shutter had been locked. In other words, the gardening shed had been a closed room. Goda-san had said that there was only one key to this shutter. But is it possible that there was a copy? And that the culprit was in possession of it? If we're allowed to theorize that there actually was a duplicate of the gardening storehouse key, and that Goda-san just didn't know about it, then this isn't even close to a closed room. But why is it that, despite the fact that almost all of the other corpses were shot to death and left almost completely alone, just these two corpses were intentionally hoisted up? I couldn't help but feel something a bit odd about that. After this, if we assume that the mystery corpse in the boiler was grandfather's, the deaths of 16 people have been confirmed. There were 18 people on this island. I'm here, and there are 16 corpses. Kanonkun's corpse is the only one I haven't been able to confirm. According to Kirie-san, he had been killed while climbing out of the well and had fallen down into it. So with the well closed up like this, it's impossible to check. I tried shining a flashlight through the bars down into the darkness in the depths of the well, but it seemed that the jet black darkness had no intention of showing me its depths with a light of that level. It looked like I'd have to break the bars after all. Using the hatchets and things I'd dragged from the boiler room and the gardening shed, I tried breaking the cover of the well. But the metal bars were extraordinarily sturdy, and breaking them wasn't easy. I hit them with the hatchet over and over until my hands started feeling weird and eventually gave up on breaking them. It's impossible. If they were at least wood, I might have been able to break them. But this metal... That's right. There's no way you can slice through metal bars like butter with a human strength. I can't even begin to understand that story about how Cannon can cut through metal bars. I heard that a light like a red laser beam grew out of his arm, and that he sliced through the metal bars like he was cutting through butter. Cutting through metal bars like butter? And what's with the red laser beam? Does that mean he secretly had a burner on him or something? And used that to burn through the bars? Still, just what kind of laser could cut through metal bars like butter? It almost sounds like the kind of laser beam you'd find in those robot anime I loved as a kid, doesn't it? Does something like that actually exist? And how did Cannon-kun get that laser beam? No matter how much I want to ask him, he's already been killed. Plus, even his corpse is now in the depths of the well, beyond this cover. If Cannon-kun could slice through metal bars, I'm sure he could handle this metal cover in a single swing. It feels just like the closed room Goda-san was locked in while holding the key. Only one person can open the door, but they're locked inside. If only I had that power of Cannon-kun's, I'd be able to do something about this cover myself. Just who is Cannon-kun? He couldn't really be a non-human capable of using a strange power, right? Kirie-san told me to believe in witches, and I even met an insane woman calling herself one. Could Cannon-kun possibly be a human on the witch's side? Or else the culprit? What the heck? Am I gonna start treating him like the culprit just because I can't find his corpse? Oh, treating him like the culprit because there's no corpse? And who was the one babbling about the suspicious being innocent? Very well. I couldn't bear having you push all the crimes on Cannon and building a human culprit theory that way. I will guarantee it with the red. Cannon is dead. Among the 5 people in Kirie's group, he was the first to die. In short, he was the 9th victim. Let's check that death notice. That one's gonna be different. And it's a sea of red with Battler. Servant Cannon. Battler was not able to find his corpse. No matter how he's killed with magic, without a corpse, he's a definite suspect. Now that's definitely anti-fantasy. Therefore, I guarantee his death with the red truth. Now that's definitely anti-mystery. Since there's no corpse, I can't say for sure that Cannon-kun is dead. Though my whispering in red does not reach the peace you, but it did reach you, right? At a glance, this was a mass murder due to something strange that could only be thought of as magic. Golden threads that attacked through keyholes. No, we even have testimony that something gold flew around the dining hall when the first 6 died. The 2 might have been the same weapon. Then there was the closed room murder of the garden shed, and the laser beam that could cut metal bars. And that wasn't all. There was much, much more. Like the group of goat monsters, the story of a witch who could create pitfalls just by snapping her fingers, the rabbit-like demons who had fired golden threads. I think there was more, but each part was all screwed up. I couldn't possibly accept it, and was forced to suspect that it was some kind of trick or mistake. But why in the world had everyone spoken with one voice, saying the same thing without contradictions in their testimony? It's not only the magic. There's Maria's mysterious death. Why Jessica knew that George Anarchy had been killed. The mysterious burnt corpse that I couldn't confirm really belonged to that damn geezer. And more and more. All stuff I don't get. I tilted the wine bottle up and gulped. I don't have a clue what's going on. After dinner last night, the kids were chased out and told to go back to the guest house. And then there was a massacre in the dining hall. Kiryu-san and the rest were dropped through pitfalls and captured. Then, Jessica and George Anarchy were called out to take a test or whatever, and killed. Even though Kiryu-san's group was able to escape the dungeons somehow, all of them got killed in the end. And at the very, very end, even Maria was killed, leaving me all alone. In short, I did nothing except stay locked up in the guest house. During that time, a huge incident occurred and ended. What can I call it except incomprehensible? I don't have a clue anymore. Now I'm nothing but a drunk. You plan on leaving only me alive? Show yourself right away and come to kill me already. It's too much of a pain, so I won't search for you. You show me your true form yourself. I won't run or hide, so come at me with arrows or bullets or whatever. I haven't gotten any sleep since yesterday, so I'm incredibly sleepy. You want to kill me? Go ahead. I decided to return to the guest house and boldly rest in a bed. When I exited the kitchen and passed through the lobby, that portrait of the witch came into view. The big clock did too. It was almost exactly midnight. Then the sound of the bell rang out, proclaiming that midnight had arrived. As I listened, I looked up at Beatrice's portrait. Exactly 24 hours ago, I met you. What were you trying to say? And where did you go? Just who in the world are you? Golden Witch, Beatrice. I haven't solved a single one of the riddles surrounding you. Show yourself, and fight me. Then the witch showed herself. Like a guest of honor finally appearing, she showed herself on the landing at the top of the big staircase. So, you finally show yourself. I've been kept bored for a whole day. Correct. I gave you a whole day. Was that enough for you to fully exercise the rights of the human side? Yeah. I was bored after all. I did a heck of a lot of it. Anji was a good piece. Don't you speak Anji's name. She appeared through a miracle, sacrificed herself, and gave you the tenacity required for certain victory. Don't you speak Anji's name. That brutal death was something you needed. If you hadn't seen that death, you wouldn't have grown serious. Without the wake-up call of Anji's ill-fated future, your tenacity for victory would not have been born. I told you not to speak Anji's name. In short, she was a necessary sacrifice. Otherwise, an anger great enough to kill me would not have been born in you. The rivalry between us cannot be destroyed. Damn you, Lady Berncastel, it's more fitting to call that a trump card than a piece. No matter how much a piece acts, it does not stray from the board. But no matter how much power a trump card wields, it is always thrown away after it is used. Anji was truly a good trump card for you. Don't you speak Anji's name! At Battler's angry roar, Beato finally stopped talking. You know, I don't have time to play around in a place like this anymore. Even a tie will keep Anji waiting. So, I'll break through you. Take my family, and go back home. I won't waste a second playing witch games with you. In that case, what should you do? You know, don't you? Yeah, I'll beat you down. I'll blast away all witches, magic, illusions, and delusions. Come on, let's get started. I won't let you trick me again. Resume the game, okay? I'll tear apart the witch's veil, concealing the outright lie you are. You talk too much. All you have to do is honestly say, I'll kill you. Yeah, if those are the words you want, I'll say them. This is the first and last wish of yours that I'll lend an ear to. I thank you. I'll... Very well. Let us begin, battler. Yes, the time for the witch hunt has come. Try and chase me, try and corner me, try and kill me. I expect a lot from you. Try and show me what your little sister gave you in her last moments. Bring it on! Battler's cry burned the world with a white light. And if you opened your eyes amidst the darkness, the two of them could be seen in a rose garden. Who shall make the first move? Me. How bold. In the rose garden, beautiful rose petals danced. The color of those rose petals was red. Did the fact that they faced each other in this beautiful rose garden prove or make claim to a single red truth? That must be why the roses are red. But in the language of flowers, roses represent passion, not truth. The flower for truth is a forget-me-not, and that flower is blue. I'll bore through everything with my blue truth. From the very beginning of everything. I'll start from the very first game. Very well. Let's see what you've got. Come. Here I go. I've already proclaimed it, but I'll say it again. This isn't just for the murder of Dr. Nanjo in the last game. This'll tear apart every scene from every game since the beginning. Ashuramiya Kinzo is already dead. So the true number of people on the island is 17. By adding in an unknown person X, that makes 18 people. By supposing the existence of this person X, the crime is possible even if all 17 people have alibis. By this, even though the number of people reaches 18, it's still possible for culprit X to exist and carry out crimes, even if all 18 people seem to have alibis. You can break through all of the murders in episode 1 by supposing an unknown person X. Furthermore, it's even possible to explain the mystery of Kinzo's evaporation from the closed room, sealed by the receipt, by making the bold assumption that Kinzo wasn't there in the first place. Unless Byato counters this with the red truth, the illusion of the witch from episode 1 has been completely smashed. This blue truth is valid. The wedge of blue truth that Battler had thrown stabbed right through the top of Byato's left foot. Was the red blood pouring out from there? A protest being made by her red truth? Byato shut one of her eyes tight, enduring the unbearable pain of the blue truth that denied her. Not bad. But I mustn't be denied yet. I mustn't be killed yet. This is not yet enough. In the subsequent games, there were mysteries that couldn't be explained with that alone, right? Which mysteries? In the final stages of the second game, George took Goda and Shannon with him, barricaded them in Natsuhi's room, and was killed. The key that unlocked Natsuhi's room was locked up inside the room, and all of the remaining keys that could unlock that door were in Rosa's hand. Even if a culprit X existed, it should have been impossible to construct that closed room. The blue wedge that pierced Byato shook. She was resisting, fighting to pull it out. No, that doesn't shake my blue truth. If culprit X were to obtain a master key, that's not even close to a closed room. No, it was impossible for the culprit to obtain one. All of the master keys were under Rosa's control. But that's meaningless if Aunt Rosa was the culprit. Aunt Rosa handed a key over to culprit X by some method, assisting in the closed room murder. And after that, she retrieved the key by a similar method. Too naive, Byato. I'd already guessed that much at the time. Yes, you did, didn't you? The wedge that had been gradually losing its sparkle and had seemed as though it was about to be pulled out, regained its strong blue again thanks to Battler's additional blue truth, and dug into Byato again, eating into her foot. Byato let out a cry of anguish at that pain. Not yet. This is still nothing. Not yet. Not yet. On to the third game. The 6 linked closed rooms, the murders of Aunt Rosa and Maria, Dad and the rest's deaths in the hall, the murders of Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi. All of that can be explained if we suppose that Aunt Ava was the culprit. This argument was already won back then, and even that final riddle you proposed through Ava, the murder of Dr. Nanjo, can be explained with an 18th unknown person, X, that breaks through the whole third game. Can you counter that? Of course. This much is nothing to worry about. In that case, how do you explain George's disappearance from the guest house? I shall add to the red truth. George did not go down the stairs of the guest house. He flew out through the window. In the final stages of the third game, George suddenly vanished from the second floor of the guest house. Ava, who had been on the first floor, claimed that no one had come downstairs. But because of the blue truth, George could have snuck down to the first floor and escaped while Ava was busy carrying Kreis's and Natsuhi's corpses outside. But by adding an additional red truth, Beato had denied that possibility. To go outside without going down the staircase to the first floor, he would have had to leave by the window. But all of the windows had been locked from the inside. So what? It's just like you said. He flew out the window, right? There was a lawn, so we couldn't tell if he jumped down, and it was raining so hard. Any light traces would have just disappeared. I'll use the red truth again. All windows and doors leading to the outside were locked from the inside. Furthermore, it is impossible to lock any of those from the outside. George had no technique by which to lock them. I'll use more of the blue. I said it myself at the time. In that case, everything works out as long as someone locked the window after George Eniki escaped through it. Nothing difficult about that. Can I not escape after something like this? Beato couldn't remove the blue wedge that was buried into her foot. The fake witch was burned more and more by that forceful blue. There's still nothing that shakes my blue truth in any of the first 3 games. In that case, the only game that can prove you're a witch is this game, the 4th game. Since I haven't countered you with the red, that is so. I shall have to prove witches using only this game. Very well. Give me everything you've got. There's nothing strange about the murder of the 6 people in the dining hall. The 18th person, X, went wild with a gun and killed everyone. As for the pitfalls, there's a chance that pitfalls truly were hidden there. And it's possible to explain it using Kirie-san's theory, supposing that poison dart shooting device X, which can knock out a person instantly, exists. The murders of George Eniki, Jessica, and those who escaped from the dungeon can also be explained with guns, just like the dining hall. There's nothing strange about it. But I'm sure you've got a counterattack, right? Bring it on. Your greatest sword, this 18th person X, is based on the theory that Kinzo was already dead. I knew you would make that claim. That's why I took Kinzo out of his study. All members in the family conference welcomed that Kinzo, right? All of those who met at the family conference acknowledged the presence of Kinzo. That's right. But grandfather was seriously ill, bedridden on the verge of life and death, right? If he was so worn out that he looked like a different person, maybe no one would have cared, right? I'll counter it with this. That grandfather was a different person, a body double. A different person the relatives mistook for grandfather. And then I'll counter with this. No person would mistake a Shuramiya Kinzo by sight. No matter what disguise might be used, they would not mistake a Shuramiya Kinzo by sight. Then I'll use this. In the second game, when you announced with the red truth that there were 5 master keys, even though there could have been more than 5 in the first game, you changed the premises of the later games. So it's possible that Kinzo's life or death status was changed for the 4th game alone. Therefore, Kinzo's presence in the 4th game doesn't serve as proof that he was present in the previous games. Therefore, even if we suppose that the 6 murders in the dining hall were carried out by grandfather, it contradicts nothing. Then let me counter this way. Kinzo's life or death status is the same at the start of all 4 games. The setup was not different for the 4th game alone. Repeat it! Kinzo was alive at the start of every game. I refuse to repeat it. I won't answer, Battler. I won't give you the red truth you so desire. Damn, you're standing in my way, geezer. Are you putting yourself on the line to protect Beatrice, this most beloved witch of yours? Swaying, that damn geezer came into view. Heh. Is he trying to be some kind of knight, blocking the path between me and Beato? Battler, are you capable of surpassing me? I won't let you reach. I will not let you reach. Not to the Golden Witch's height. You see? Your thoughtless reasoning cannot surpass even me alone. Die. Kinzo's jet black cape spread as though it would swallow the world, becoming the snout of a vast black dragon that came at me, trying to swallow me in one gulp. Faced with that black dragon's roar, I calmed my breathing and closed my eyes tightly. I'll swallow you up in a single gulp. Disappear, inexperienced fool. Quiet, you damn undying ghost. Oh, so you call me a ghost? So you intend to see it through to the end, this theory that I am already dead. That will prove fatal to you. Be swallowed up by the first twilight of the 4th game and disappear. The black dragon's vast mouth, its snout, its fangs, swallowed Battler whole. In that instant, Battler suddenly opened his eyes. Thanks, Beatrice. Your 3rd game became a foothold for my counterattack. What? See ya, damn geezer. This is goodbye. As a basis for claiming that Kinzo was dead, even in the 4th game, I propose the following theory. Very well. Come with all you have, my descendant. Here I go, you damn geezer. My theory is that the name of Kinzo gets passed on as the title of the Ashuramiya family head. Ashuramiya Kinzo was already dead, and he passed that name on to someone else. Everyone acknowledged that. That way, all of those who met at the family conference acknowledged the presence of Kinzo. There wasn't even any need for someone to disguise themselves as grandfather, because everyone acknowledged and knew Kinzo. So, they didn't actually mistake Kinzo by sight. As long as this theory is not denied, nothing can change the fact that you're dead. This is the final blow. Damn geezer, I demand that you repeat it. Among all of the people there, not one had multiple, different names. I can not. Rest in peace, damn geezer. Thank me. You are finally able to die. This is your requiem. Take it and drop dead. Ashuramiya Kinzo was already dead. That's right, you definitely deserve to be pitied, since whenever we find your corpse it's always completely burnt. That was a device to hide the fact that time had passed since your death. Then you passed that name on to someone else. With this theory, even though you were dead, Kinzo was able to appear at the family conference. How's that? This is checkmate! Several dozen blue stakes bored into Kinzo's ghost. Their terrible destructive power wouldn't let the ghost recover again. Beatrice. Kinzo, thank you for everything. Rest in peace. I will not forget my time spent with you. Dispersing along with the shadow of the black dragon as golden flower petals scattered, Ashuramiya Kinzo became a gold-colored cyclone and disappeared. Even after death, he had fought for the sake of the woman he'd loved. There's no doubting that your love and madness were the real thing. Battler? Don't hate me. Let the dead sleep. Don't wake them. You're up next. This is the end for you two. Beato still couldn't pull out the blue wedge that pierced her foot. She realized that she was on the verge of death. I've gone along with you a whole bunch. I think I've more than fulfilled any responsibility I had to play with you. But it's about time to finish things up. I've got a lonely little sister waiting at home. Let me take my leave with my whole family. Then kill me. In that case, try and kill me. I won't run or hide, and by now I won't even be able to avoid it. Come on, Ashuramiya Battler. You've got it. With the 18th person X from the Kinzo was dead theory, everything that remained has been pierced through. George Anarchy and Jessica's deaths in the fourth game can also be explained by culprit X, and the 5 who escaped from the dungeon and were killed, and the 2 in the gardening shed, and Maria in the end. All of those can be explained with 18th person X. There's nothing strange there at all. With this, I've fully explained the culprit using humans for all games. Beatrice, this is checkmate! Beatrice, who couldn't dodge, had several blue stakes driven into her. And was skewered. Beato grabbed at them, trying to pull them out somehow. That got me. It hurts. This'll kill me, won't it? If I don't pull these out, I'll die. I've had enough of the pain. I've had enough of the anguish. With both hands, Beato firmly grasped one of the blue stakes. Naturally, the power of the witch-denying blue truth burned her hands. Unable even to hide her tears at the pain, Beato howled and tried to pull the stakes out with all her might. If I can't pull these out, I'll die. This is my final counterattack. Then, Battler, how do you explain my several acts of magic? The very first time those appeared was in the second game, when I fixed Maria's pumpkin marshmallow. At that time, Rosa definitely witnessed that magic. Certainly, at that time, Rosa witnessed gold butterflies gathering and the fixing of a marshmallow by the miracle of magic. Rosa alone witnessing it isn't very credible, right? That's why I increased the number of witnesses to the uppermost limit later on, which is what happened in this last game. The summoning of my minions and brutal murders due to magic. All of those were witnessed by a great many people. That is itself proof that my magic exists. How do you explain that? Assure me a battler. Stalemate. What? Magic exists because magic exists. Didn't the rules of our brown tube trial say that you couldn't use that kind of argument? Yes, you're right. No matter who or how many people witnessed magic, that cannot become proof of magic's existence. Whether all the magic you've shown exists or not, I can ignore it all and explain things with humans. That's my undeniable right. Am I wrong? At those words, the blue stakes let out an even brighter light, knocking my hands away. Seems I can't pull them out after all. Ugh. As Battler is now, even if I pull up a witness for each individual bit of magic and demand an explanation, I'll probably use some. He'll probably use some kind of move to deny all of them. Not just the magic with the marshmallow I showed Rosa, but all the miracles of magic. So, I can no longer even claim to be a witch without questioning him about something like how a marshmallow was fixed. I'm in such an inferior position that I must fight over such trivialities. It may be impossible for me. I know that. This was to be a game without victory from the very beginning. So it was only natural that the day of my defeat would eventually come. Have I fought? Up until today, just to lose to Battler? I began the game thinking I might be able to win. Even if I wouldn't be able to win easily, I believe that in a game repeating endlessly, a miracle would eventually occur. After all, I had certain willpower on my side, an unwavering desire to win with certainty. However, I've now lost that miracle completely, and that certain willpower resides in Battler, leaving me certainly without even a 1 in a million chance at a miracle. Or perhaps I should say I've been left without a miracle or certainty. I will have no victory and no end through a tie. The only resolution allowed me is to continue on resisting until defeat is given to me in this game. That's right, I am fighting only to be killed by Battler. I looked into Battler's eyes. That which was reflected inside them wasn't me. The figures of the little sister waiting for his return and the family he had to bring back were reflected in those eyes. To him, my existence is already not even that of an individual. Obviously, from the very beginning, he has been trying to deny the individual that I am. Yes, that last game sure was fun. I was only tricking him a bit. But for just a short period of time, it felt like we understood each other. And that was fun. That's right. I should have made my move then. I should have continued for eternity with Battler still totally fooled. But that's just no good, right? That just wouldn't be true victory. Is this checkmate, Beatrice? Beato had been run through with several blue stakes, skewered over and over to the ground while still standing. Because of that, she wasn't even able to fall over. And still looking up into the sky was sewn in place. That tragic form might have been a fitting end for the cruel witch who had endlessly toyed with 18 people's lives and who had killed constantly for hundreds and thousands of years. Gently, as though someone was mourning over something, rain began to fall. Amid that rain, Beato was soaked and crucified. Is it over, Beato? Can't even let out a squeak. Not yet. You aren't a woman who'll let things end with just this. Don't be ridiculous. How can you look at this and think that it isn't over? Quickly, deliver the final blow. Just say it with your blue truth. According to this, witches do not exist. Say it. Just say it. With that single blow, just put a stop to my breathing. It's useless. Oh, so you would expose me to even further shame? Isn't it settled already? Stand up. Our brawl still isn't over. Not over, you say? That just now wasn't you losing. You just opted and gave up. Isn't that enough? Wouldn't giving up mean your victory? You should return to your little sister. Right away. Just throw me away. Right here. Didn't I tell you? I won't run away. And I won't let you run away. Just who are you? And what in the world is it that you want? If you want to know, why don't you just try your favorite move? Isn't it better this way? With me as a mere delusion. An illusion. Isn't that enough? It's all useless. I won't let you run away. I'll break through you. How could I let you run away like this? I won't let you run back to the darkness of illusions while you're still all hazy like this. I'll break through you. Completely. So stand up. Don't act all frail like that. You're still hiding several moves. I can tell. Why won't you let me escape? Dad, Mom, and Anji. All of the cousins and all of the relatives and all the servants. You toyed with them so much and killed them. I definitely won't forgive that inhumanity. I can still feel Anji's arms on my shoulders. I won't forgive your inhumanity, so I won't let you get away like this. Battler's eyes burned with the flames of hatred. The time had long since passed during which pitiful behavior would have earned his compassion. After being tricked once, Battler will never sympathize with me again. Instead of the wolves and sheep puzzle, this is like the boy who cried wolf, isn't it? What am I supposed to do? What should I do? Is fighting endlessly only to avoid admitting defeat a fitting endless torture for the endless witch? Is endlessly harassing Battler to avoid giving him victory also part of being the endless witch? It's so sad. Is this what the endless magic is? I've had enough. I've had enough of endlessly being toyed with by witches. I will have no victory and no tie. In that case, there's only one result that can release me. Since the time I succumbed to the path of witches, since the day I made that contract with demons, it was promised that I would meet my end through tragedy, was it not? What's wrong? Golden Witch, Beatrice. If you are the ruler of Rockinjima, show me a majesty fitting for that, even at the very end. Lightning. the world was smashed with white. Fitting last moments for the ruler of Rokkenjima. Still pierced by the blue stakes, Beato faced the rainy sky and let out a cry of laughter. Then she slowly raised her face and stared at Battler. Fool. Just when I was about to praise your good fight and hand over victory, you shall regret that pride. This isn't something for you to hand over. I'm gonna take it from you. The same goes for you, right? You could never accept an easygoing victory where I just say, maybe witches existing isn't so bad. Isn't that the very reason you intentionally fell apart like that at the end last time? That's right. Last game you took pity on me just once, didn't you? So now I'll pay back that debt. Stand. My enemy, my golden witch, Beatrice. Fool. You fool. You simpleton. You think you'll get another chance? Ah. When Beato yelled, the blue stakes that had pierced her chest blew to bits and disappeared. However, the blue wedge that had pierced her foot in the very beginning did not vanish. You can't pull it out yet. You can't pull out that blue truth of the 18th person X. I will respond to one thing you told me to repeat. As you reasoned, Kinzo is already dead at the starting time for all games. However, this means that you can take one person out. Before now, I have proclaimed that no more than 18 humans exist on this island. I will lower that by 1 for Kinzo. No more than 17 humans exist on this island. That excludes any 18th person. In short, this 18th person X does not exist. This applies to all games. What do you know? What do you know? Looks like you're still hiding some pretty crazy stuff up your sleeve after all. The island, which had no more than 17 humans on it, has been set up to appear as though there were 18. Taking one off makes it 17, so we finally reached the correct number. This way, the wedge I knocked into you has been removed. We'll have to start the fight over, back from square one. The blue wedge that had sewn Beato in place broke apart. There was no longer anything piercing her. The scars on her body had disappeared completely. There stood, just as Battler had hoped for, the figure of the majestic golden witch who ruled Rokkenjima. Then come, Battler. Once more from the beginning, try and break through everything with the blue truth. I too will no longer play, run, or hide. If you are worthless, then I shall end this match right here, right now. With my grand victory, I'll make you regret your refusal to compromise for all eternity. Come, starting from the first game. Right. From the first twilight of the first game. There's nothing strange about the murder of the 6 relatives that were found in the gardening shed at the start. The crime was possible for any of those who didn't have an alibi. Valid. Continue. What about the next closed room murder with Ava and Hideyoshi? Even the chain was set for that closed room. I shall add to the red truth. Both deaths were homicides. It is not the case that, after the construction of the closed room, one of them committed suicide after committing murder. Furthermore, the murder was carried out with both the victim and the perpetrator in the same room. No method exists for the perpetrator to commit murder from outside the room. Suppose that the culprit was a human without an alibi. In other words, the dead. We weren't able to identify some of the first 6 corpses because of their smashed faces. Maybe one was actually a disguised corpse, and culprit X killed those 2 after making us think they were a victim and hiding away. Then, after the closed room murder was constructed, the culprit hid under the bed and waited for all of us to come and leave. Very well. Next. Cannon was killed in the boiler room, correct? I shall add to the red truth. All of the survivors have alibis. Let us include the dead as well. In short, no kind of human or dead person on the island could have killed Cannon. If no one could kill him, then he might have been the one to kill. Cannon-kun might have killed himself. Repeat it. Cannon-kun did not commit suicide. Cannon did not commit suicide. One more. Repeat it. Cannon-kun's death was a homicide. I refuse to repeat it. By that refusal, it may be possible to view it as a homicide, but you've already proclaimed in red that no one could have killed him. In other words, it wasn't a homicide. This is the same as the linked closed rooms for the 3rd game. Cannon-kun died for a reason that was neither suicide nor homicide. The details are unknown, but he died due to an accident. Because of the devil's proof, I refuse to explain what kind of blunder could have led to an accidental death where a stake was driven into his chest. Ho ho, now that you have borrowed the power of demons you are without peer, it is valid. In that case, what about the murders after that in the parlor of Genji, Nanjo, and Kumasawa? Naturally, Maria, who was in the same room, did not kill them. And of course, their 3 deaths were homicides. We can explain those murders with culprit X, who hid away using an unidentified corpse. After all, those 3 had their faces smashed. It's completely possible that one of them was a body double corpse. I guarantee the identities of all unidentified corpses. Therefore, there were no body double tricks. Then you can explain it with simultaneous murders. Each of them had a gun, pointed it clockwise, and blew each other's faces off at the same time. After that, Maria collected those guns and hid them. How about that? What? What a ridiculous argument. How amusing. Then what about Nazi in the end? I shall add to the red truth. Natsuhi's death was a homicide. There were no unidentified corpses, and all of the survivors have alibis. You can explain it with an indirect murder due to Trap X. Something was done to Aunt Natsuhi's gun. It could have been a trap gun, built to send a bullet right into the forehead of anyone who tried to hold it up and shoot it. The bullet buried into Natsuhi's forehead was not fired from her gun. It's possible that Aunt Natsuhi was lured out by that letter whose contents were unknown. She was called out into the hall. Then she was forced to stand at a specified location at a specified time and murdered by Trap X, which used a gun that had been installed there beforehand. Wonderful. These reckless arguments of yours are even starting to feel pleasurable now. Out of respect, I shall hand the first game over to you. Well done. Well done. Gah! The instant Beato acknowledged her defeat in the first game, the stakes of the blue truth once again pierced her chest, letting out a terrible sound. This is still hardly painful, and it's not over yet. Come now, for the second game. Beato just barely pulled out the stakes that had pierced her chest. But even though there was no hole left behind, she still seemed to be bearing a deep wound that was letting out a massive amount of blood. And she was tormented by an equally fierce pain. But Beato grinned, grinding her teeth, and pushed for the next game to start. But I won't feel sympathy for her. Just by her existing there, we've been killed and harassed over and over. And Anji's been burdened with a future of isolation. Correct, just by my being here and laughing, this eternal hell will continue. I won't give your little sister back. Let her cry over the family that shall not return for the next 1,000 years. Damn it! No compassion, no mercy. On to the second game. I'll start with the first crime. Right after it happened, I penetrated to the truth of the closed room murder, where the 6 were killed in the chapel. Someone secretly borrowed Maria's key and secretly returned it to Maria's bag after the crime was over. From the time Maria received her key to the instant Rosa unsealed the envelope the next day, the key passed through no one's hands. That door might have had an auto lock, just like Gramps' study. In other words, it was unlocked before the crime, with a rock or something wedged in so that it couldn't close completely. Then someone gave the key to Maria. The lock was automatic, so it's possible to make a theory where the key wasn't needed. There were no doors with auto locks other than Kinzo's study. The victims locked the door from the inside. One of the 6 was the culprit, and this person killed the other 5, then pretended to be dead. The 6 were already dead by the time they were discovered. All of their deaths were homicides. All 6 were genuine victims and did not take part in a mutual murder. There was no simultaneous murder. There were people, Kumasawa-san in particular, who had no alibi at the time. If we assume that someone was hiding on the inside, then we've got no problems. There was no one hiding in the chapel. Therefore, the shut-in murder you suggest does not work. What's wrong? Is that all? Assure me a battler. It's not so easy once you get to the second game, right? It was a thundering exchange of red and blue truth. The stakes and wedges of blue truth that I sent flying attacked one after the other, and Beato cut them down one after another with her red truth, her red treasured sword, knocking them down. But the blood she'd lost from the first game was probably serious. This intense exercise was putting an even greater strain on her. I could also see her breath grow ragged. That's why I can't hold back now. I'll corner that witch. This time I'll break through her. Not yet. It's useless. It's all useless. My twisted logic isn't finished yet. Then what about this? The food they were given had small bombs in it, which exploded from inside their stomachs. In other words, the crime was possible through Trap X. The exact nature of bombs they could swallow without noticing and which could also blow open their stomachs is a devil's proof. I refuse to explain. What the hell is that? Small bombs? But Beato failed to knock down the blue wedge as it flew at an angle like a breaking pitch. It let out a loud thunk and gouged itself deep into her left shoulder. However, even as the breaking pitch hit her, her laughter didn't seem to be stopping. Yeah, I get it. Even I think that theory's pretty screwed up. Ha! Laugh as much as you want. Got a problem with that? None. Quite a pleasurable, reckless argument. Next up is the closed room with Jessica and Cannon. No problems there. If the culprit was one of the servants, they could have used the master key. It's not even a closed room. After that, there was an attack in the servant room from a mystery person who seemed to be Cannon, and Nanjo and Kumasawa were killed, right? I had already proclaimed Cannon's death in red before that time. So, who was that Cannon? If Cannon-kun's death was proclaimed with the red, there's no way he was alive. Therefore, there's a chance that the one who attacked that group was in a disguise that made everyone mistakenly think it was Cannon-kun. They would never mistakenly think any other person was Cannon. Then, just like the heredity of Kinzo's name, there's a possibility that Cannon's name was inherited by someone. You could suppose that Cannon-kun was killed, a different person succeeded that name, and that this person attacked them. A sound like a watermelon being squashed rang out, and a blue wedge that was buried deep into Beato's left flank. I misread that. A blue wedge was buried deep into Beato's left flank. Maybe it hit in a bad place, since it seemed to be really effective. After leaning over and moaning for a while, she laughed it off as though trying to make it seem like no big deal. Yeah, I get it. That must have hurt a lot. Yeah. Once again, you set up some human as the culprit as if it were nothing. You truly are gabbing on about things you'd never be able to open your mouth and say on the game board. And yet it's valid. That reckless argument is pleasurable. Truly pleasurable. This isn't pain. It's pleasure. When Beato howled, the wedge that had pierced her was blasted away. But the wound remained, and she continued to be tormented by a fierce pain. You ready? I'll keep going. My blue truth for the last murder in the second game. The 3 who died in Aunt Natsuhi's room should still be valid even with the 18th person X denied. Do you have a counter-argument for that in red? If you don't, the second game is all mine too. No, I don't. Fighting over such trivial matters bores me. I'll give it to you. I'll give you the second game. The instant she acknowledged her loss in the second game, 2 blue stakes gouged through Biyato's chest this time. The witch's lungs were gouged, as were her intestines. Her face twisted in anguish. Her body twisted as she gasped in pain. Does it hurt? Hurt? No, this just tickles. Yeah. At least compared to having your entire body torn to bits and turned into a pile of scrap meat. Like your sister. I'll make you scrap meat too. Then your siblings can be all mixed together like ground beef and pork. I'll beat you to death. I'll tear you to bits the same way. Next, the third game. How long are you gonna sit around all worn out like that? I've only just started knocking you down to hell. Yeah. Naturally, as if something like this could wear me down. You're right. We're still just getting started. Come, let us begin the third game, starting with the 6 linked closed rooms. You supposedly did penetrate this closed room at the time, but then you killed off Kinzo. At the time, I theorized that Gramps was the culprit, and that after killing the other 5 and stringing the keys across each room, he'd constructed his own closed room in the boiler room, and that there he died in an accident while carrying out some kind of scheme, burning to death in the boiler. But now I've declared that Gramps was already dead. So I've denied my own theory myself, ironically enough. However, there's no problem. Plenty of people besides Gramps could have committed the crime. You could even claim that all the adults holding the family conference were in on it. All 5 master keys were discovered, each in the pocket of one of the servants. The individual room keys were found inside envelopes alongside the corpses. In short, all keys related to the linked closed rooms were locked inside the linked closed rooms. No key could have been returned from outside the room using the crack of the door, the crack of the window, vents, or any place of the sort. Then they were killed with poison gas. Even if a key couldn't pass through, gas could, right? The murder was carried out from outside the closed room. All of them had what appeared to be gunshot wounds that were fatal. Murdering them from outside the room would have been impossible. I shall say more with the red. When the 5 other than Kinzo were killed, the killer was definitely in the same room as them. I already proclaimed in red at the time that there were no suicides. After the murder of each person in their respective rooms, the culprit created a linked closed room. But the culprit had no way to return just the key to the very last room. And yet, they were able to do it. After all, the first person to discover a corpse just had to pretend to find the key and pull it from the pocket of one of the corpses. she couldn't fully block the retort of that blue stick. Beato was pushed back by the blue wedges that were unleashed on her one after another, finally failed to block one, and once again took a severe wound. Yeah. As she howled in pain, she pulled out the blue wedge that had pierced her right arm. Beato's entire body had been torn apart and pierced with blue wedges, stakes, and blades, over and over again. And now she was totally covered in blood. But even so, Beato grinned, cackling as though this was amusing. How could a man who promised to bring Anji's parents home voice a theory where those parents are culprits? Splendid. Even that's just fine, right? Go be a big happy family getting their hands dirty with mass murder. Then return to Anji stained with blood that will never come off. How can we expect anything less from the people who returned alive from the Witch's Island? Just what that mincemeat Anji needs. Yeah. Shut up! I'll kill you. I'll tear you apart. No need to waste your time begging for your life. I'll definitely give you the worst kind of death by my own hands. Yes, you probably could do it. I've explored the depths of cruelty for over 1,000 years, and you probably will gift me with a fitting end for all that. Ooh, does that hurt? Is it harsh? Or does it tickle? Is that supposed to torment me? Come on, assure me a battler. There are still mysteries left. Beato had already countered my first powerful move, the 18th person X, by making the number of people on the island 17. But just limiting the number of people to 17 didn't overturn the theory that Aunt Ava was the culprit. I could crush most of the murders in the third game this way. Blood dripped from all over the body of the Golden Witch. I cornered her, this time thoroughly, without mercy. This isn't a game played to decide who wins and who loses. Yeah, we aren't playing. Even the time I spend playing and fighting like this delays my trip home. In her isolation, Anji will continue to have her heart torn apart by loneliness and sadness. I have to go back to Anji as fast as I can. You're all worn out. Standing at death's door, are you? It still doesn't burden me. Something like this. It tickles. It looks like you don't need any mercy. I never asked for it. Oh, I never asked for it in the first place. I'm going all out. Do so. When our roles were reversed, I showed no mercy, so you ought to do the same when given the chance. Otherwise, I'll summon another isolated Anji from a different world, and this time I'll tear off her arms and legs, stick her with a spear, and roast her, okay? Shut up! Never again. Not my family. Not my relatives. Not any of the servants. I won't let you make them your playthings. I've already broken through all of the mysteries in the 4th game with the blue truth. The only one left is the very last one from the 3rd game. Only the murder of Dr. Nanjo. Oh, have I already been cornered so far? What a precarious state I'm in. She coughed violently, spitting up blood. Her insides had been punched through so many times. It was only natural. In other words, the mystery of Dr. Nanjo's murder is the last line of defense for you being a witch, right? As you say, if you defeat that, it will mean that all of my mysteries have been defeated. Unless I counter one of your truths with some new red truth, or present a new mystery, I will die. You don't look like someone who's been pushed into a corner, standing on the brink. You still have some kind of hidden pitch up your sleeve, right? Well, who knows? I have already tired of a too long life after 1,000 years. I've started to think that having this life ended by a rival like you, whom I stumbled upon at the very end, might not be so bad. You can do it, can't you? Do it. I beg you, kill me. I'm always the one killing, and I've never had the experience of being killed. I've killed the 18 of you hundreds of times, but I haven't been killed myself even once. So I wanted to experience it just once myself. It was a graceless show of boldness, unchanged from before. But blood dripped from her mouth, her once beautiful dress was covered with holes, and blood poured from all over her body, making her physical appearance stand in sharp contrast to her attitude. Maybe the shot she'd taken to the flank was still tormenting her, since she was still pressing down on it unconsciously, without a trace of grace. But I've got no time for pity. As long as I feel sympathy for this witch, my family and I won't be released from this place. Until I defeat her, we won't be able to go home. In the outside world, it may be possible for even enemies to understand each other when circumstances change. But pure evil does exist. Evil that brings misfortune just by existing, and is to be spared no compromise. Just by its continued existence alone, it's evil. I don't pity you. Just like how you didn't show pity for any of us. Well, of course. All of you are just pieces in the game. It's just unbelievably fun to think about which 6 to kill in the beginning, how to kill the next 2, and whether I can find a much more grotesque method of murder, you see? Hey, Battler, I've reformed a little, so forgive me this time too. If you do, I'll change my methods of killing into something a little better, okay? I'll listen to how you want them to be killed, and in what order. Got it? It's so fun toying with people's lives. I'm sure you could think of a way to turn Anji into a pile of scrap meat much more thoroughly. Come, Battler, try to expose the truth of Nanjo's murder. The 18th person X has been defeated, but I won't give in. I'll stop that witch's breathing cold. the end of the third game. It was announced in red that the survivors at that point in time, Battler, Ava, Jessica, and Nanjo, were all uninvolved with Nanjo's murder. And it was also proclaimed that he was murdered directly by someone before his eyes. All other people had the strongest possible alibi by having their deaths proclaimed in red. I'll break through this without using the 18th person X. Think. Don't stop thinking. Her red doesn't only bind me, it's also supposed to be her weak point. I've got to somehow use it against her. That's right. There's still a gap. Yeah. This way, I can break through it. This way, Beatrice's legend of the witch is finished. True, the others probably were dead. However, their deaths were not proclaimed in red at the instant Dr. Nanjo died. Strictly speaking, it was in the fight between me and Ava after Dr. Nanjo's corpse was found. In other words, if someone was alive at the time Dr. Nanjo was killed and then died before Ava made that proclamation, you can sew right through that crack. In other words, it's like this. Someone who was first confirmed dead by Ava's proclamation was a culprit. They cleverly played dead earlier and waited for us to come and go. Before their death was announced in red, we were made to think that they died. Then they killed Dr. Nanjo and later died for some reason. After that, Ava proclaimed their death in red. That theory can explain Dr. Nanjo's case. How's that, Beatrice? When he forcefully asked that question, there was a terrible sound that could only be likened to that of a compressor. And a blue stake that was as thick as a log appeared from under the earth and skewered the golden witch, Beato, pulling her up into the air. Ugly tearing sounds rang out, and each time a blue stake or wedge would appear and pierce Beatrice's body. When that finally ended, her tragic form was exposed there, pin-cushioned by more than 10 stakes and wedges all over her body and dripping with blood, dangling and crucified. There was none of the dignity of the brutal witch who had sneered at the honor of the dead and toyed with and killed hundreds of the living. The rain, which had started falling at some point, quietly tormented the crucified witch. As Battler heaved with his breathing, he waited for some kind of answer from the golden witch. Although it wasn't long, it took the witch a bit of time to show any signs of life. It hurts. It hurts. You got what you deserved. Now you can experience a portion of the pain felt by all those you've killed. Even as he said that, it seemed that Battler had lost a little of his momentum at this extremely pathetic sight. Even if it was an enemy, he couldn't look straight at a woman exposed in such a brutal fashion. But even so, unless he destroyed Beatrice, this battle wouldn't end. Battler, I beg you. Huh? Beato let out a sob. It hurts. It really hurts. End it. End it. Even with this, I still can't die. Even though it hurts so much, I still can't die. What are you asking of me? End it. Release me from this pain. Beato's expression was soaked with blood and tears. Battler certainly had been tricked by her at one point, so he was probably able to suspect that her expression, that even her tears, were an act. However, Battler believed in those tears. After all, those tears had the red of truth mixed in with them. What should I do? What can I do to end your pain? I will now expose everything. This is my heart. Your heart. Me. Beato. Me. Just let me die. Were those tears from pain and torment? Or else? Either way, that pathetic expression was painful for Battler to look at, even after burning with such anger. Quickly, go back to Anji. I'll listen to your request. Not so that I can go back, but to end your pain. Then... Ooh. Battler... In her last breaths, Beato summoned up all of her remaining strength and managed to close both of her hands into fists. A red light began to gather at those fists. Then she lifted her arms, as though appealing to the heavens for something. You'll be able to kill me. All of me. My heart. Crush it. Pierce it. Okay? The red light around both her arms gradually began to strengthen. Please. After saying that much, her face tilted to the side a bit. Then her right arm lost its light and flopped down. But her left arm alone did not lose its light and remained held out towards the heavens. Then, before Battler's eyes, another Beato appeared, with a faint form transparent like a curtain. The crucified Beato had already lost consciousness. However, the newly appeared faint Beato quietly looked at me, her eyes expressionless, and spoke. Assure me, a battler, I will now kill you. And And right now, there is no one other than you on this island. The only one alive on this island is you. Nothing outside the island can interfere. I understand. This is the last mystery Beatrice will be able to make as a witch. She's trying to offer it to me, entreating me to solve this final mystery and kill her. Do it. I'll accept your final mystery. You are all alone on this island, and of course I am not you. Yet I am here now and am about to kill you. Like a souped up version of Dr. Nanjo's murder. So? Who am I? Is that your final question? Who am I? Then Beatrice slowly approached me and, still expressionless, held me. Yeah, I get it, Beato. I'll kill you. Don't worry. I also slowly held her head. Then I, as a piece, left the game board. Fourth game, Alliance of the Golden Witch. Has come to an end. But we have one final thing to do as we wrap up this entire half of the game. Not just episode 4, the question arcs. Let's hop on in. Unknown. Fragment number 5610984, etc. Scattered on a large bed were cute jelly beans of various colors, and chocolates shaped like ohajiki pieces. A fork was stuck into a shortcake peeking out of a gift box, and there were decanters with drinks of various colors lined up on a side table. But the color of the partially finished drink that had been poured into a cup was venomous, matching none of the decanters. Someone had probably been playing around, mixing various things together. That can be lots of fun, if you don't mind the taste. On top of the fluffy bed were several colorful big pillows like something from a dream. And on this bed, that looked like something out of a child's dream world, Baron Castell lay face down, and Lambda Delta lay face up, clutching a pillow and relaxing. It was pretty thrilling this time, wasn't it? I got really panicky when Beato said she'd stop the game. What a rude witch, to start a game like this and try to end it by throwing it away. Wasn't Anji a good piece? After Beato ran for it, Anji dragged her back and made her resume the game. Although it's a shame that she gave Battler a little too much enthusiasm. After all, I knew Battler was a softie. No kidding. He looked like he might even go easy on Beato, his enemy. I was uneasy that, like the last game, he might actually feel compassion for Beato and take the game in a weird direction. Anji was a trump card to get Battler back on track when he mistook his goal. Although I wanted her to support him a bit more before using her up. She really did get used right off the bat. What a waste for a piece that required so much preparation. Good thing I shackled her with that rule about not giving her name. If that hadn't been set up, the brother-sister tag team would have swallowed Beato up and won in the blink of an eye. I thought it'd be a chance for them to press her all at once, but your mark was so restrictive that I couldn't make the best use of her. What a waste that piece was. Isn't it obvious that such an unfair piece would have to be retired right away? Well, in the end, she did a good job of preventing the suspension of the game, and that helps me out too. The way she made both our interests match is what made her a truly wonderful piece. She was an innocent kid like Battler, so it was easy to get her to do as I said. Morons and impulsive types make the best pieces. I really can't stand losing that piece. By now that kid's minced meat. Hey, let's make hamburgers out of her later on. Oh wait, didn't you like gyoza more? I wonder what little sister tastes like. Hilarious! Is it really okay for you to be so relaxed? Thanks to Anji, Battler has gotten all fired up. I'm pretty sure he started a hot pursuit of Beato, making this game take a big turn in my favor. Right? I mean, didn't Battler just solve almost all the mysteries up until now? Huh? Not even close. Almost all of Battler's blue truth was wrong. Beato's lukewarm red is full of holes. If she had any brains in her, she'd slip through it easily by setting up a suitable web of twisted logic. Yeah, it really ticks me off. If it were me, I'd thoroughly cut all of it with the red. Oh, really? And I was sure that those were all correct. Well, I don't know about that small bomb part, though. Not all of Battler's blue truths were valid. When talking about the first game, Beato clearly declared that she guaranteed the identities of all unidentified corpses. And this defeats Battler's theory about the culprit of the Eva Hideyoshi closed room murder being someone who faked up a corpse. Next, Cannon might have died in an accident in the boiler room, but... What kind of accent could drive a stake into his chest? Are you a moron? I'll slice it with that red treasured sword thing. Kanon did not die in an accident. For the next one, the murders of the three, including Genji in the parlor, the thought that it was a simultaneous murder where they shot each other in a clockwise pattern at the same time is laughable. Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo are not killers. The final trap X to kill Natsuhi was also ridiculous. The thing that shot Natsuhi wasn't a trap, it was a real shooting murder with a gun raised and trigger pulled. Sucks for you. You shouldn't do that. Saying something like that in red. That kid's trying to say that she bounced Natsuhi's bullet back with magic and killed her. Oh my, how terrible of me. You're right. Even the blue truth for the second game was way too naive. When the six were murdered in the chapel, the culprit was inside the chapel. That guy keeps trying to explain things using Trap X. What the heck is Trap X? Some weird mystery novel cliche? It's also laughable to say that, in the case where Nanjo and Kumasawa were killed in the servant room, someone else inherited Kanon's name. No one else can go by Kanon's name. A different person can't claim that as their name. And that theory about borrowing the master key from Rosa for Natsuhi's room is also worthless. After the master keys came into Rosa's control, never did any of them leave her hands. Except for the time when she lent one to Battler to unlock Natsuhi's room. I could keep on going, but just taking a quick look at them turns out like this. Get it? Forget taking a quick look. You just denied Battler's blue truth for the first and second games across the board. My, what a shame. If Battler heard, he'd faint. Right? Byato wasn't cornered at all. Looks like that kid's a pretty good actress after all. I'm sure she planned to make it look like she was getting cornered this game. And then sometime next game, bang! She'll slice it up with a red stroke to make Battler freak. And then I'm sure she'll say it again with a huge smile. Witches never get into a pinch. Then that whole tragic atmosphere, as though Byato was getting cornered, was all an act. Isn't it obvious? She really is a great actress. Even though she wasn't cornered at all, it felt like an astonishing last episode climax. She's totally the winner for Best Supporting Actress this year. But of course, I'm the star. You do fine too, Burn. At the end, she said something like, "Kill me," and laid out a big riddle. Wasn't that her last stand, with Byato to be finished for good if that riddle was solved? Come on, were you seriously tricked too, Burn? That wasn't even close to a last stand. Byato's still holding back a killer hidden move. When she stuck out both hands to give the final riddle, did you notice how she lowered just her right hand? Yeah, now that you mention it. Is that what that meant? Sure is. That kid still had plenty of hidden moves left. And none of the mysteries have been solved. That tension, like she'd been exposed and the next episode would be the last. She truly is a genius at acting. Yeah, I want to see her knock Battler down to the very bottom right away. That kid's been totally encouraged by her North, Wind, and Sun strategy from last time, right? I'm sure Battler will sympathize with Byato again and fall for it completely. After all, a single tear from a woman can fool a man. Totally economical and profitable. I wonder if Battler will get caught by the same move again. I've got to spur him on so he never feels sympathy again. Although Anji's mincemeat seems to have done that pretty well. A power-up from an Anji-flavored hamburger? Ho 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 ho! Of course, I won't lose either. Starting here, I'll thoroughly support Beato to rally her up enough to compete with Battler. Beato won't lose. I mean, I'm threatening her with a wonderful punishment game if she loses. Your punishment games are seriously not cool, so you should go a little easy on her. I've decided what to do for your next punishment game, Bern. Wanna hear? Wanna hear? No. Come on, ask me. Guess what? Guess what? I'll lock you in a wonderful, wonderful castle. That castle will be surrounded by pure white castle walls, 12 kilometers to a side, with a height of 10 meters. Magic and tricks are prohibited. You really couldn't jump over that, right? 1,440,000,000 cubic meters. You can stop there. I already know what you're going to say. And that place will start getting buried with gems, one every day. I'll lock you in it until the castle walls are packed with them and you've been buried to death with gems. Isn't that a wonderful romantic punishment game? If you multiply the length of the walls by 5 and make it 1/10 of its current height, I wouldn't mind if you shut me in it right now. Really? That would make it 3,600,000,000 cubic meters, right? The time period for the punishment game would more than double, right? I get to keep you as my prisoner for such a long time. I really like you, Bern. I love you. Lambda Delta playfully approached Bern Castell, who yawned, looking bored, as she touched the bottom of Lambda Delta's chin as though cuddling a cat. You're betting on Battler's victory, and I'm betting on an eternal tie for the two of them. Doesn't that mean no one's betting on Beato's victory? I wouldn't. Her chances of winning are 0. Oh, that's truly pitiful, being told by the Witch of Miracles that there's no chance of a miracle. Although I wouldn't bet on her either, right? I can say that with certainty. It's also pretty sad when the Witch of Certainty says that you're certainly screwed. Unusually for them, they giggled together. I wonder how this game will resolve itself. Yeah, that's the one thing we can't predict. That's why it's fun. I won't permit escaping or suspensions any longer. I'll certainly make them continue their game, and I won't let them run away. Even though I can't imagine what will happen next. I know it certainly won't end that way. At the very least, it won't end with Beato's victory. I mean, think about it. Neither of us is betting on Beato's victory. In other words, if it looks like Beato is gonna win, she'll have us two great witches as enemies. Exactly. Our powers are most in equilibrium when balancing between a tie and Battler's advantage. If it tips too much in Beato's favor, both of us will line up along the same vector and drag Beato back. In other words, the instant Beato's in a superior position, she'll have to deal with both of us as enemies. A common front with Bern sounds fun. Thanks. But I'm not going into a Conpetu candy bath with you. Aww, and I was gonna cover you with melted marshmallows while taking a Conpetu shower. Oh, pitiful. That child is a living toy. A doll you caught so that you could play with me, Lambda. I'm good at playing with dolls. I really can do it well, okay? I'm proud of being able to play with a single toy for hundreds of years without getting tired of it. You're her ally at some times and oppose her at others, toying with her for all eternity. How pitiful. That kid is now our doll. That's right. That kid is our doll. No end has been prepared for that kid except the ones the two of us desire. In other words, I can say for sure that this can only end by repeating a tie for eternity because of me. Or else with Beato losing and becoming destroyed because of you, Vern. As far as this game ending with Beato's victory goes, I will proclaim it as the Witch of Miracles. Then I will proclaim it as the Witch of Certainty. Beato certainly cannot win, and the miracle certainly will not occur. And there, we hit the true halfway point. 4 episodes done. Again, I say halfway point. I assume between the latter 4 episodes, they're probably a little bit longer. But structurally, this is the end of one of the games I have bought, and we will now play through the other one. Just while the credits roll, I suppose. One thing I found funny when playing the game the first time through is that from episode 3, pretty much every time I was getting to the end of an episode, I was wondering, how does this continue? What is the rest of this game going to be about? Because every single one of them does feel like, in a sense, it's becoming an ending, and then doesn't. And that feeling will continue a little bit. This one in particular manages to massively feel like an ending, and also this tiny little question mark tea party is just like, this is absolutely not an ending. It's very good. And thus ends this half. Thank you for watching through all these videos, and the spoiler ones if you're so inclined. Apologies to anyone who has not been able to watch any spoiler episodes yet, because most of what I actually talk about happens in there. But you're halfway to being able to watch all of them, so congratulations. With that, this ends this video, and we'll see you next time as we begin episode 5. Oh, hang on. The picture has changed. It's the Golden Land. Until next time, thank you for watching.